I never thought my daughter would be the one to save me from the wreckage of my own marriage. But that's exactly what happened on a Tuesday evening in October, when my 8-year-old girl climbed into my lap while I was packing for what was supposed to be a 5-day business trip to Denver, wrapped her small arms around my neck, and whispered words that stopped my heart cold. "Mom, I heard Dad on the phone saying someone would move in after your business trip. If you're watching this from somewhere in the world right now, drop a comment and let me know where you are. And if you've ever had that moment where everything you thought was solid just crumbles beneath your feet, you'll understand exactly what I felt in that second. Make sure to check the description box below for more stories like this one, because sometimes we need to know we're not alone in the darkness. I remember how carefully I set down the blouse I'd been folding. How I made myself smile at Emma, even though something sharp and terrible was unfurling in my chest. How I asked her, as calmly as I could manage, what exactly she'd heard. She told me she'd been getting water from the kitchen around 9 the night before, past her bedtime, which is why she'd been quiet, and she'd heard her father's voice coming from his home office. The door had been cracked open just slightly. She said he'd been laughing, that low, comfortable laugh I used to love, the one that made me feel like I was the only woman in the world who could make him happy. Except he wasn't laughing with me. He was laughing with someone else. Emma repeated the words as best she could remember them. She can finally move in once Kate's gone. 5 days is plenty of time to get her settled. Then something about how I'd been so busy with the business lately that I wouldn't notice if things looked slightly different when I got back. How he'd just say we needed some new furniture, some fresh energy in the house. I pulled Emma closer and told her she was such a smart, brave girl. I told her everything would be okay. I told her to go brush her teeth and get ready for bed, and that Mommy just needed to make a few phone calls for work. She looked up at me with those wide hazel eyes, his eyes, unfortunately, and asked if Daddy was in trouble. I kissed her forehead and said, "No, sweetie, Daddy's not in trouble." But even as I said it, I knew that wasn't quite true. Daddy was about to be in more trouble than he could possibly imagine. After I tucked Emma in and read her 2 chapters of the book we'd been working through together, I went downstairs to where my husband of 12 years sat watching a baseball game, beer in hand, completely relaxed. David looked up at me and smiled that easy smile that had once made my stomach flip. He asked if I was all packed, if I had everything I needed for Denver. He reminded me that he'd take good care of Emma while I was gone. He even joked about how they'd probably eat pizza 3 nights in a row and stay up past bedtime watching movies. He was so convincing, so perfectly, effortlessly normal. I matched his energy exactly. I smiled back. I said I was almost done packing. I asked him to make sure Emma did her homework and didn't have too much screen time. I leaned down and kissed him on the cheek, and I felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. It was like kissing a stranger. A dangerous stranger. That night, I barely slept. I lay in our bed, the bed we picked out together 7 years ago, the bed where we'd conceived Emma, the bed where we'd held each other through his father's death and my mother's cancer diagnosis, and I stared at the ceiling while David snored softly beside me. My mind was racing through everything. How long had this been going on? Who was she? How had I missed the signs? But then I realized I hadn't missed them. I'd explained them away. The late nights, he said, were work meetings. The new cologne. The way he'd started going to the gym religiously after years of me begging him to take care of his health. The distance in his eyes when we made love, which had become less and less frequent over the past 6 months. I told myself it was stress. I told myself we were just in a rut. I told myself that after 12 years and a child and a business I was building from the ground up, this was normal. This was what marriage looked like. I'd been lying to myself, but I was done lying now. If you've ever been in this position, where you suddenly see your entire life from a completely different angle, you know how disorienting it is. How everything you thought was real suddenly feels like a stage set, and you're just now realizing you've been performing in someone else's play without even knowing the script. If this story is resonating with you, hit that subscribe button, because what happened next is something I never could have predicted, and you're going to want to see how this unfolds. By 3 in the morning, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to Denver. I was going to cancel that trip, and I was going to stay right here in this house and watch my husband's plan implode in real time. But I had to be smart about it. I couldn't just cancel the trip and let him know something was wrong. He'd adapt. He'd postpone whatever he had planned. No, I needed him to believe I was gone. I needed him to feel safe enough to go through with it. So when morning came, I got up and went through all the motions. I finished packing my suitcase. I made breakfast for Emma and reminded her about her spelling test on Friday. I kissed David goodbye at the door, pulling my roller bag behind me, and told him I'd call when I landed. I even waved from the car as I pulled out of the driveway. But I didn't go to the airport. I drove to my best friend Rachel's house across town, the friend I'd known since college, the one person in the world I knew I could trust with this. When she opened the door and saw my face, she didn't even ask questions. She just pulled me inside, poured 2 massive cups of coffee, and listened while I told her everything. Then she did exactly what I needed her to do. She helped me plan. Rachel's house became my command center. We set it up in her guest room, the one with the window that looked out over her garden, the one where I'd stayed 3 years ago when Emma had pneumonia and I'd needed to be close to the children's hospital. Now I was here for a completely different kind of emergency. A marriage emergency. A life emergency. The plan was simple on the surface but required precision. I needed to make David believe I was in Denver while actually being 10 minutes away from my own house. Rachel would be my alibi, my lookout, my accomplice. We started by crafting the perfect digital trail. I posted a photo to my private Instagram story from the airport, a picture I'd taken months ago during a different trip, strategic cropping to hide the date stamp on the departure board. I texted David a picture of a coffee cup with the Denver airport logo that Rachel had pulled from Google Images. I complained about the delayed flight. I sent him updates about checking into the hotel, complete with a photo of a room that wasn't mine. Meanwhile, I was sitting in Rachel's guest room in yoga pants and one of her oversized sweatshirts, eating leftover Chinese food and watching my husband through the lens of the security cameras I'd installed in our house 6 months ago. He didn't know about those cameras. I'd put them in after we'd had a break-and scare in the neighborhood, telling him I'd just upgraded our alarm system. But the cameras were there, hidden in smoke detectors and picture frames, giving me eyes on every room except the bathrooms. At the time, I thought I was being smart about home security. Now I realized I'd been preparing for this without even knowing it. That first night, Wednesday night, David acted completely normal. He picked Emma up from school. They got pizza, just like he'd promised. He helped her with homework at the kitchen table. He let her stay up an extra 30 minutes to watch a cartoon. He was being Dad of the Year, and I watched it all on my phone screen, my heart aching for my daughter who had no idea what was coming. When he tucked her in, I saw him kiss her forehead the same way I did. For a moment, I almost doubted everything. Almost. But then, after Emma's door closed, I watched him pull out his phone. I couldn't hear the conversation through the cameras. I'd opted for video only to save on storage costs, a decision I was now regretting, but I could see him. See the way his whole body language changed. The way he smiled. The way he ran his hand through his hair, that gesture he used to do when we were dating, and he was nervous excited about something. He talked for 27 minutes. I timed it. Then he went to the bedroom, our bedroom, and I watched him open the closet and start moving my clothes to one side, making room. Making room for her. I felt Rachel's hand on my shoulder. She brought me tea, chamomile that neither of us really believed would calm me down, but the gesture mattered. She sat beside me on the bed and watched the screen with me. When David pulled out 2 of my dresses and actually put them in a garbage bag, Rachel said the words I was thinking. That son of a bitch. Thursday was worse. I maintained the Denver charade, sent David pictures of a conference room, complained about boring presentations, asked about Emma. He responded with reassuring texts about how everything was fine at home, how Emma missed me but was being so good, how he had everything under control. The lies came so easily to him. Each text was a little knife, precise and sharp. But I watched everything. I saw him deep clean the house on Thursday afternoon after Emma went to school. I saw him change the sheets on our bed, fresh linens, the expensive ones we usually save for special occasions. I saw him buy flowers and put them in a vase on the kitchen counter. Roses. Red roses. The same flowers he bought me on our first anniversary. My stomach turned. Thursday night, after Emma was asleep, I watched him make another call. This time it was shorter, just 11 minutes. But his body language told me everything. He was confirming plans, finalizing details, getting ready for her arrival. If you're still with me, I want you to know, this part of the story nearly broke me. Watching your husband prepare your home for another woman, watching him erase you from your own life like you're nothing more than an inconvenience to be temporarily relocated, it does something to your soul. But if you've ever been betrayed like this, you also know that sometimes betrayal doesn't just break you. Sometimes it forges you into something harder, something sharper. And you need to stick around to see exactly how sharp I became, because Friday changed everything. Check the description box for more stories about survival and revenge, because this is just the beginning. Friday morning arrived with crystalline clarity. I'd barely slept, but I didn't need sleep anymore. I was running on pure adrenaline and righteous fury. David took Emma to school at 8:15, just like always. I watched him hug her goodbye, watched him tell her he loved her. Then I watched him drive home, and I watched him make the call I'd been waiting for. The call lasted 4 minutes. When it ended, he was smiling. He went upstairs and showered. He put on the blue shirt I'd bought him for his birthday. He checked himself in the mirror 3 times. Then he went downstairs and sat on the couch, and he waited. At 10:30, a car pulled into my driveway. I watched through my phone screen as a woman I'd never seen before got out of a silver Honda Civic parked in my driveway. She was younger than me, maybe early 30s, with long dark hair and the kind of effortless style that comes from not having an 8-year-old and a business to run. She wore jeans and a leather jacket, and she carried 2 suitcases. 2. Not an overnight bag. Not a duffel for a weekend. 2 full suitcases, the kind you pack when you're planning to stay. David opened the front door before she could knock. I watched them embrace in my doorway, watched him pull her inside, watched him kiss her with an enthusiasm I hadn't seen directed at me in years. The way his hands moved to her waist, the way she laughed against his mouth. It was intimate in a way that told me this wasn't new. This had been going on for a while. Rachel had left for work. She'd taken the day off tomorrow, Friday, to be with me for whatever was about to happen, but she still had to put in an appearance today, so I was alone in her guest room with my phone and my rage and my carefully constructed plan. I gave them 30 minutes. 30 minutes to get comfortable. 30 minutes to believe they'd gotten away with it. 30 minutes for him to show her around my house, my life, my space, like it was his to give away. Then I got in my car and I drove home. I'd called my lawyer yesterday. Patricia Chen. No. Wait. I need to keep this authentic. Patricia Morrison was her name. A sharp woman in her 50s who'd helped me set up my business LLC 3 years ago. I told her everything. She'd taken notes in that calm, methodical way lawyers have, the way that makes you feel like your catastrophic life implosion is just another case file, just another day at the office. She told me exactly what I needed to do to protect myself legally. Document everything. Don't make threats. Don't get physical. Let him hang himself with his own rope. So I had my phone recording as I pulled into my driveway at 11:07 on Friday morning, a full 4 days before I was supposed to return from Denver. The silver Honda was still there, parked brazenly in the spot where I usually parked. I sat in my car for exactly 2 minutes, giving myself time to breathe, to center myself, to remember that I was doing this not just for me but for Emma, for my daughter who deserved to see her mother stand up for herself, who deserved to know that being treated like this was never, ever acceptable. I used my key to open the front door. I walked into my own house, and the first thing I noticed was the smell. Her perfume. Something floral and cloying, completely unlike the subtle vanilla scent I wore. It had infiltrated my entryway, my living room, my space. I could hear them upstairs. I could hear her laughing. I could hear his voice, lower, intimate. I stood at the bottom of the stairs and I called out, my voice steady and clear. David? I'm home early. The sound stopped immediately. For about 5 seconds, there was perfect, crystal silence. Then I heard scrambling. Footsteps. Panic. David appeared at the top of the stairs, and the look on his face was worth every second of the past 2 days of torture. It was shock and horror and guilt all rolled into one spectacular expression. He was wearing the blue shirt and nothing else. Behind him, I could see her, pulling on clothes, her face flushed with what I assumed was a combination of recent activity and absolute terror. Kate! My name came out of his mouth like a question, like he couldn't quite believe I was real. What are you? You're supposed to be in Denver. I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Funny thing happened. My meeting got canceled. Decided to come home early and surprise you. I looked past him to the woman who was now desperately trying to button her shirt. Though it looks like I'm the one who got surprised. This is the moment when everything I've been holding back, all the hurt, all the rage, all the betrayal, could have exploded. I could have screamed. I could have thrown things. I could have fallen apart right there in my own entryway. But I didn't. Because I'd learned something over these past 2 days of watching and planning. The best revenge isn't hot. It isn't emotional. It's cold. It's calculated. It's precise. Why don't you both come downstairs? I said, my voice perfectly calm. We should talk. All three of us. The woman, her name was Sarah. I'd learn later. Sarah Richardson, a paralegal from David's firm who he'd been sleeping with for 8 months, looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. David looked like he was trying to figure out if this was real or some kind of nightmare he might wake up from. They came downstairs slowly, awkwardly, like criminals walking to their sentencing. In my living room, surrounded by the furniture we'd chosen together and the family photos on the walls and the life we'd built, I told them exactly what was going to happen next. I'd thought about this moment for 2 days straight. I'd imagined 100 different versions of it. In some versions, I was screaming. In others, I was crying. In a few, I was throwing Sarah out bodily while David begged for forgiveness. But the version I chose, the version I executed with surgical precision, was none of those things. I sat down in the armchair by the window, the one my grandmother had left me, the one that had been in my family for 3 generations. I looked at my husband and his mistress, both of them standing awkwardly in the middle of my living room like children caught stealing cookies, and I began to speak. David, I want you to know that I know everything. I know about the phone calls. I know you've been planning this for weeks, maybe months. I know you thought you could just slide her into my life while I was conveniently out of town, and I'd come back to some new reality you'd constructed without my consent. I turned to Sarah. And you thought you were moving into a bachelor's house, didn't you? He told you we were separated, maybe even divorced. He told you I was the problem, that I was never around, that I didn't appreciate him anymore. Sarah's face told me I'd guessed correctly. The shock in her eyes was genuine. She turned to David. You said you were divorced. You said it was final. Oh, honey, I said, and there was something almost pitying in my voice. We're not even separated. Our 12-year anniversary is next month. We have a daughter who sleeps down the hall. The family photos are literally on the walls behind you. I watched Sarah's face transform from fear to fury. She looked at David like she was seeing him for the first time. You told me you were divorced. You told me she was never home. You told me, her voice cracked. You showed me pictures of this house and said it was yours. Just yours. David tried to speak. Sarah, I can explain. No, I interrupted. No, David, you really can't. Because here's what's going to happen. Sarah, you're going to take your 2 suitcases and you're going to leave. You're going to get in your car and you're going to drive away from here, and you're never going to contact my husband again. Not because I'm asking nicely, but because if you do, I will make your life a living hell. I have screenshots of every text message, thanks to the phone records I pulled yesterday. I have video footage of you entering my house. And I'm betting your employer, David's firm, has a pretty strict policy about workplace affairs, especially when they involve married partners. Sarah's mouth opened and closed. She looked at David one more time, and whatever she saw there, the weakness, the cowardice, the lies, it killed something in her face. Without another word, she grabbed her suitcases from where David had left them by the stairs and walked out my front door. The Honda pulled out of my driveway 30 seconds later. I never saw her again. Now it was just me and David, my husband, the man I'd loved since I was 26 years old, the man who'd proposed to me on a beach in North Carolina and cried when Emma was born and held my hand through every hard thing we'd faced together. Except we hadn't faced them together. Somewhere along the line, he'd stopped being my partner and started being my enemy. Kate, please, he started. I want you out of this house by tomorrow, I said. You can take your clothes and your personal items. Everything else stays. I've already talked to a lawyer. I'm filing for divorce on Monday. We'll work out custody arrangements for Emma through our attorneys. If you try to fight me on this, I will bury you. I have evidence of your affair. I have proof you were planning to move another woman into our home while our daughter was here. No judge is going to look kindly on that." He sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. "It wasn't supposed to be like this." "No." I stood up, looking down at him. "How was it supposed to be, David? You were going to what? Keep both of us? Have your family when it was convenient, and your girlfriend when you wanted something exciting? Did you even think about Emma? About what this would do to her?" "I love Emma," he said, and his voice broke. "I know you do. That's the one thing I'm sure of. But you don't love me. Maybe you did once, but you don't now. And that's okay. We could have handled that like adults. We could have gone to therapy. We could have had honest conversations about what wasn't working and made difficult decisions together. But instead, you chose this. You chose to lie and sneak and betray, and you chose to do it in a way that would have humiliated me in my own home." I walked to the window and looked out at the street where we taught Emma to ride her bike. "Emma told me, you know. She overheard your phone call. My 8-year-old daughter knew something was wrong before I did. She came to me, and she whispered what she'd heard, and she saved me from walking into this blind. So whatever happens next, whatever damage this does to her, that's on you. You put our child in a position where she had to protect me from you." David was crying now. "I'm sorry. Kate, I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. Things got complicated and I didn't know how to." "Get out," I said quietly. "Pack a bag and get out. Go to a hotel. Go to your brother's. I don't care. But I want you gone in an hour." He left in 45 minutes. I watched him throw clothes into a duffel bag, watched him take his laptop and his toiletries, and the watch his father gave him. He paused at Emma's door like he wanted to go in, but I was standing there, and he must have seen something in my eyes that told him not to. He walked out the front door, got in his car, and drove away. Then I was alone in my house. I walked through every room, opening windows, letting the breeze carry out her perfume and his cologne in the staleness of lies. I stripped the bed, those expensive sheets he'd put on for her, and I threw them in the garbage. I took down the roses and dumped them in the trash outside. I called Rachel and told her it was done. Then I sat down at my kitchen table and I cried. I cried for the marriage I'd lost, even though I was the one ending it. I cried for Emma, who would grow up in a divided home. I cried for the version of myself who'd believed in us, who'd worked so hard to build this life, who'd missed the signs because she was too busy trying to hold everything together. But I also knew, even as I cried, that I'd done the right thing. That staying would have been worse. That teaching Emma to accept disrespect and betrayal would have been worse. That losing myself to preserve a lie would have been worse. 2 days later, I picked Emma up from her friend's house, where she'd been having a sleepover, blissfully unaware of the earthquake that had just rearranged her world. I sat her down and I told her, age-appropriately, that Daddy and I were going to live in different houses for a while. That sometimes grown-ups love each other but can't be married anymore. That none of it was her fault. That both of us loved her more than anything in the world. She cried. She asked questions I didn't have good answers for. But she also hugged me tight and told me she was glad I was home, that she'd been worried when she told me about the phone call that I'd be mad at her. I held my daughter, and I told her she'd done exactly the right thing, that telling the truth is always right, even when it's hard. David and I worked out custody through lawyers, just like I'd said. We sold the house. I couldn't stay there, not after everything, and I bought a smaller place across town with a yard big enough for Emma and a home office for my business. David moved into an apartment downtown. He sees Emma every other weekend and 1 night a week. We're civil at exchanges. We're both in therapy. We're both trying to give Emma as much stability as we can from the wreckage. It's been 8 months now since that Friday morning when I walked into my own house and blew up my husband's plan. 8 months since I chose myself and my daughter over a comfortable lie. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks ago. I'm rebuilding. It's slow and it's hard, and some days I'm angry, and some days I'm sad, and some days I'm just tired. But I'm free. I'm not living in a performance anymore. I'm not pretending everything is fine when it's not. I'm not teaching my daughter that women should tolerate betrayal for the sake of keeping the peace. If you've stayed with me through this whole story, thank you. If you're going through something similar, if you're watching your life unravel and wondering if you're strong enough to handle it, I want you to know you are. You absolutely are. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is walk away from what's broken instead of bleeding ourselves dry trying to fix it. And if this story meant something to you, please check the description box below for more stories about survival, strength, and starting over. Because we're not alone in this. None of us are.